Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I'm here today at the James Julia Auction House taking a look at some of the guns that they're going to be selling in their upcoming October of 2016 firearms auction. And I have here Han Solo's Space Blaster, Han Solo's Steampunk Carbine, a laser gun. Okay, it's actually a Mauser Conehammer carbine that someone has added a scope to, and it's really cool. Now, this is cool on a couple different levels. At the very beginning, first off, I should say, this is a factory gun, but it is not a factory scope. This was done aftermarket, but in the same time period as the gun. So it's not a recent addition, but it's not a gun that came out of the Mauser factory with this setup. What someone did is they bought this carbine, and then they took it to a gunsmith and had the scope mount and the scope added, which is actually really cool. Now, Mauser only made 30 of the Conehammer version of these carbines. Now, when I say Conehammer, I'm getting into some of the esoterica of Mauser broomhandle collecting jargon. Specifically, what I'm talking about is the shape of the hammer itself. And on these very early ones, they look kind of like a chameleon's eyeball there. It's actually three-dimensional and conical. So this button is cone-shaped. You'll see it from the side. Later on, they would have large ring, which is a flat ring that just has a big hole in it, and small ring, which has a smaller hole in it. Those are kind of three of the standard varieties the ways you'll hear different periods of C96 Mausers described. Well, this is a cone hammer, which is extremely early. They only did this for the first couple of years of production. We're talking mid-late 1890s, 1896, 1897. And they only made 30 of the carbines with this style of hammer. Now, a lot of different companies making early automatic pistols, like the Mauser Broomhandle, the C96, a lot of those companies made carbine versions. And normally that would be a pistol with a long barrel that has then a detachable shoulder stock. What Mauser did that was a little bit different from for example, different from what DWM did with Luger carbines, is that the Mauser carbines have a totally different frame to them. They actually do not have the standard pistol grip or broom handle of a C96. Instead, this stock is actually dovetailed onto the bottom of the frame here and is detachable. Now, unfortunately on this one, the button's stuck and it's a rather valuable carbine, so I'm not going to go hitting on the button there with a punch or anything. But the stock actually slides off, and then you can store the whole gun in a package about this big. Pretty cool and convenient. They then have a forward handguard here, which is also attached to the frame. So this is, of course, a short recoil gun, meaning that when you fire, the whole barrel assembly slides back slightly. The barrel assembly is not connected directly to the handguard, so you can get a nice good grip on the handguard and not cause the gun to malfunction, as you would on a Mannlicher carbine. And they put 11.8 inch barrels. Specifically, it was a 300 millimeter barrel on these. Later on, the barrels would get a little bit longer. The other standard length was 370 millimeters, but this is a slightly shorter one. Now, it is exempted from the NFA, so this is not considered a short-barreled rifle in the United States because of its collectible status. And beyond that, the mechanism is a standard broomhandle Mauser. So it's a 10-round magazine. It fires the 7.63 millimeter Mauser cartridge, just like the pistol does. The internals are all interchangeable with the pistols. So beyond the gun itself, we also have the scope and scope mount to take a look at. The style of scope mount is typical of Germany in around the turn of the century. This is basically the same style of scope mount you'd see on, for example, World War I Mauser snipers, which of course is the same as what you get on sporting rifles of that period. So we'll take a closer look at that. It's a very low power scope. I'm going to guess 2 power, maybe 3, might be 1.5. But actually pretty cool, and it lines up nicely, and you can even see the iron sights through the mount. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at that. So taking a look at this scope mount, it is a centrally mounted scope in that the scope is directly over the bore. However, the rear scope mount is offset, and that's so that it doesn't interfere with the rear iron sight. And the way this works, it has 2 claws in the front and 1 in the back. We have a little spring plunger right here, and if I push that in, I can lift the scope up like this and just pull it straight off. So you can see it's got these 2 hooked lugs on the front, one of them on the back, and then these matching recesses in the scope mounts where the scope locks into place. One thing that contributes to knowing that this is an aftermarket scope edition is that originally this carbine would have been marked Mauser right here on top of the chamber flat. And the gunsmith simply put the scope mount over the top of that, which makes sense from a gunsmithing perspective. Had Mauser been the original manufacturer of this gun, they would have marked Mauser elsewhere on the receiver where it would still be visible. And as you can see, they have not. The sides of the receiver are unmarked, except for the serial number 12 right here. 12 on the stock, 12 on the frame. The barrel has this nice sight rib to it, which was standard on the cone hammer carbines. Special order for other types of carbines, but all of these particular, this run of 30, all had that. And then it has a rear sight that went out to 500 meters, just like a standard Mauser. Now, as part of this scope edition, here's another contributing non-factory rationale here. You can't move the scope past or the rear iron sight past 150 because it hits the rear scope mount. Now, why do you need that if you've got the scope? So who cares? We'll just mount it there anyway because that scope mount's got to go somewhere, is I'm sure what the gunsmith was thinking. So that makes sense, but had the Mauser factory been putting it there, they probably would have done something different. And we do have some markings on the scope here. Karl Goluk in Linz. I'm probably pronouncing that a bit wrong, but, and it's a Kallis, a Karl Kallis scope, or Kals. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. That's a proper period scope. Goluk there was probably the gunsmith who did the conversion work. And this scope has a single adjustment knob, which is used to set your range. So that's a BDC, and some cool brass fittings on the scope there. All right, a little fuzzy because of the focus, but you can see the reticle there. It's a horizontal line with a thick vertical pointer, a vertical line with a point on top. And then we also have, see if we can get this in focus. There we go. We have this available iron sight picture as backup down below through this circular hole in the scope mount. So there's the scope down here to your iron sights. So ultimately what we have here is someone's conception of what a really cool sporting carbine would be. The gun dates from a little before 1900. The scope is around that era, although there's no way to tell exactly when it was added. But this is someone's short-barreled, handy takedown, optics and iron sight equipped little hunting carbine. Could certainly use it for target shooting, recreational shooting, all the same sorts of things that people do with, well, cool, tactical, short-barreled pistol carbines today. You know, ultimately, things don't really change. People don't really change. And just as we find this sort of thing pretty cool today, people certainly found it cool back 100 years ago as well. Well, thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is a really neat gun to take a look at. Some collectors would scoff at anything that wasn't in original factory configuration, but to me, I think that scope just makes this whole package that much cooler. If you'd like to have it yourself, and who wouldn't, go ahead and take a look at the description text below. You'll find a link there to the Julia catalog page on the gun where you can see their description and their pictures, and you can place a bid absentee by phone or come up here to rural Maine and participate in the auction live. Thanks for watching. Han Solo's steampunk carbine.